The idea of having to have your name identically match the .com because that's the only way people are going to be able to find your website, I just think that that is an older school way of thinking.
All right, today we're going to be talking about a topic that everyone is always asking us for. Since we're not attorneys, I love having you guys on. That is going to be trademarks and the importance of branding. I think it is the most underestimated part of bringing a new product to market. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. I want to ask, what motivated you guys to fly in from Knoxville and Nashville to come to our little town of Framingham and get on a podcast?
Branding. We love talking about trademarks, branding, intellectual property generally. I'm a true believer in the value of trademarks in particular. I think that there are very few things that, for the cost of registering a federal trademark, for example, have the same return on investment. And an example I like to give is sometimes I like to talk about Google in this context. You know, if tomorrow I bought every patent Google owns and I hired every engineer they have and I had their search algorithm and I launched my own search engine and I called it 52 Launch, how many people would come and run a search there?
Right.
How many? But if tomorrow I were to buy, very few, and then you'd be competing with Google for the cost of customer acquisition, right? But if tomorrow I were to buy Google's trademark portfolio and their top level domain name, I could build an inferior search engine behind that. And guess what? Everybody still's coming because that name, that's the value. It's the only way to make tangible the intangible goodwill of your business. So we're really passionate about it. And we really believe that it's something that every brand should be doing is protecting their trademarks.
Oh, look at you're preaching to someone who has learned this the hard way by not doing it early on. In fact, look, I've come full circle on my belief. In my world, it always comes down to if you can't afford them both, what do? Buy the product that you go sell, or buy the protection that you need to then go and make a product that, like, I can't sell protection, I can't sell that kind of stuff, right?
Sure.
So what I've learned along the way is when you're a true entrepreneur, you need it all. It's just a matter of how do you put it all into one place. So look, this is just, I'm going to take a teachable moment. The reason why you guys are here is because that is exactly what you need to do, right? There's a method in which you can find the real estate space that you're looking for. I call real estate trademarks.
It's a great way of looking at it.
Right? Like, I need to be where people are going to find me, but I can't afford to be, like, how many times do you look on a GoDaddy or some sort of domain platform and the name you love is there, but it's like 40 grand.
Yep. Right.
Like, guess what? It'll be there in a little bit down the road. So what can our belief has always been, how do I do something at the lowest cost to get started, and then when revenue comes in, start to build it? So help me unpack that, because what you just said sounds like real estate that maybe even we're not looking at properly. Like, to me, I looked at, okay, if it's available as a .com, no dashes, no weird stuff, like just a straight .com, and I can use that same handle on every social media platform, the chances are someone else hasn't gotten it. That's probably not exactly true, but it's close enough for you guys to start doing your work. Tell me how it should work.
I'll say the analogy I always tell my clients: chase the green grass. You can come up with whatever name you want, and as long as you're not butting up against somebody else, like if what you're doing is creating a good product or you're providing a good service, people are going to know the name, but they're going to think about the quality of what you've put out there in the marketplace. It's certainly just not a situation where I would say, you got to have that name, let's go ahead and just bet the farm on the name alone. So we help clients navigate that question. Ultimately, it's on a spectrum. So a lot of clients will say, well, I'm the Knoxville lawyer, I'm going to call it the Knoxville law firm. And maybe that's great. Maybe there's an SEO strategy behind it. But I might do myself some favors by saying I can come up with a name that's totally unique, like Trust Tree. It doesn't immediately describe what I'm doing. It doesn't talk about the services that I'm providing.
Right.
And inherently, I'm separating myself and creating that green grass. So we have clients navigate that because ultimately they have to like the name, right? They have to do something that they're proud of and they want to get behind. But ultimately, chase that freedom. Try to find some way to separate yourself from competitors and do yourself a favor from day one. And it costs nothing to just come up with a unique name.
Yeah, so Derrick, you use something that I use all the time, and that is, well, first of all, it's something I teach. Everybody that calls us with a name, I'm like, every 2 word has been taken since 1998. So, obviously that's probably like I remember when law firms, for whatever reason, would be the people that bought every domain that they could. but two names have been taken since 1998. That means you use Trust Tree, the two names that make no sense together sometimes. Some of those are available, right?
Right.
That's good real estate to look at. So when you have that, tell me what you guys do next.
Well, I have a little bit of a counterintuitive approach to this. I start with the name, and not necessarily with the domain name.
Okay.
I do think that it's smart to go and see, does anybody have this domain? If they do, what are they using it for, right? Is it the same as what I'm doing, or is it distinct from what I'm doing? Because there's a little bit of a common misconception that when you own a trademark, you have the unfettered right to use that trademark for all things. But that's not the case. Your rights are limited to the goods or services you provide under that trademark, or goods or services a consumer might think a business like yours would provide under that trademark. So if you'll indulge me for a second.
Yeah,
so from a 40,000 foot view,
yeah.
What makes a trademark is that it's source identifying, okay? So people use the words patent, copyright, and trademark interchangeably, but they protect very different things.
Right.
Patents protect inventions. Copyrights protect creative works. Trademarks protect source identifiers. So typically it's going to be a brand name, a logo, or a slogan, okay? So starting there, think Delta. Delta Airlines, Delta Faucet, same trademark, it's Delta. But because their goods and services are sufficiently distinctive, there's no likelihood that consumers would confuse the source of one's goods or services as the source of the other, right? So they can both have that trademark. So when it comes to finding a name, you may not be able to find one. It's very hard to find one that nobody's using for anything, let alone a domain that's widely available. So I think starting by looking at domains, starting by looking at social media handles, it's a great place to start.
Yeah.
If you don't see somebody using that name, though, for what you're doing, that's green grass to me, because I also feel this way about domain names.
Yeah, no, look at that's, and I think this conversation is about where our clients align, right? And then that's, and I'm sure there's a bigger topic, like, again, Knoxville attorneys, everybody's got their service business. I particularly deal in products, right? So products, when someone comes to us with a name, I would say it's never been the source or the case that we have run into trouble with something that someone thought they would have. So I like the analogy that we can look at something like, or again, the two Delta examples are perfect.
Well, and think about, this is what I think about. I know how I search for things on the internet.
Yeah.
Most domain browsers now, or most browsers, when you go to enter the domain name, right, you don't have to enter trusttree.com.
No.
I could type in trust space tree, enter, and then what am I going to get? Whatever my default search engine is, it's going to pull up related names, right? That's how most people are doing it now. Young people, my son's 7. He's learning how to use the internet. I promise you, he's never typing in 52launch.com. He put in 52launch.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if you own 52launch.com, because if you own 52-launch, as long as your SEO is good, or if he types in whatever it may be that would be associated with Brain Scan, if I type in Delta Airlines, I'm going to find Delta, the airline, not Delta Faucet. So I think people put sometimes too much stock into, I have to get this domain. We also know there are all these available domain, top-level domain names, you know, and you don't have to have the .com anymore. You can do all sorts of things. So to me,
let's unpack that.
Find that strong brand name.
I have a question, or again, just it's a question. Like for me, the fear would be, it's not that someone else is using the name. It's just that I am going to be on page 6, which is where you can hide $1 million on Google, right?
Sure.
So how do I get there? How do I use a name that's familiar or currently in there? Someone types it. You know, I always look for the clean real estate again, that like nothing else is there. So help me understand the top key, the what you just unpacked about
GTLDs.
GTLDs, yes.
Well, I think it's evolving, first of all.
Okay.
It used to be a .com, .co,
Right.
.net.
Because I agree with everything that Kevin said.
Yeah.
So help me understand how to unpack the GTLDs.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, whatever comes after the dot, right? And actually, it's just opened up not too long ago. You can submit for new GTLD approval. So it's going to continue to become more and more dispersed. I think we'll only see more de-evolution from .coms being the predominant. You know, I think it'll always be front and center. But I think the broader points that Kevin's making, if people associate your brand with that quality of the product, were talking about earlier, I think they'll find you, whether it's a .com or a .net or a .tree or a .whatever comes out in the future. I think it pairs with socials. I think it pairs with your SEO campaign. But ultimately, again, it kind of goes back to what I said previously, which is, what are we doing with this name in comparison to what other people are doing with similar names that are out there? And whenever we get involved, that's really what we look for. How similar is your trademark to another mark that's already out there? How related are your products or your services to the products or services that are offered under that trademark? And if there's enough gap there, then we feel like we actually have a pretty good chance of helping you not only secure trademark protection, but carve yourself out in the SEO game as well.
And you're not going to end up on page 6 if you have good SEO. You're not going to be on page 6 if you have a lot of followers to your social media. I mean, all of these things are taken into account now for how they're ranked. And moreover, increasingly, we're going to see people using tools like ChatGPT and Claude to go search for things. Again, the idea of having to have your name identically match the .com, because that's the only way people are going to be able to find your website, I just think that is an older school way of thinking that doesn't reflect how young people, and when I say young people, I don't mean young like, I might consider myself, and I'm in my 40s, or Derrick might consider himself, he's in his 30s. I'm talking about a teenager right now.
Yeah.
And this is what I like to think about when we started our firm, which provides online legal services. When we started this, people thought we were a little bit out there. But I kept thinking, well, what's somebody who's, I was in my 20s at the time. I was like, well, what's somebody 10 years younger than me? In 10 years, what are they going to want to do?
Right.
Are they going to want to feel like they have to put on a suit and drive downtown to come meet me in my office so I can apply for a trademark for them, which is something I'm going to do through the internet anyway?
Yep.
Or am I going to meet them where they're at? And so I think getting back to the initial thing we were talking about, it's so hard to find a name where the domain name is available and all the social media handles. And if you allow that to deter you, you might never find one unless you are completely inventing something, which is a common way of creating a trademark. But the strongest trademarks in the world, many of them are what we call arbitrary marks. Apple is a generic name for a fruit. And if Apple sold apples, they could not register that as a trademark. But for a technology company, that's what we call an arbitrary mark. They've given it new meaning, right? When I hear a conversation and I hear the word apple, I don't think people are talking about fruit. That's a powerful trademark, right? So it can be as simple as that. Because you give it the meaning. Sometimes I talk about trademarks in this sort of dynamic. Your brand is your personality, your trademark is your name. So if somebody sees the name Kevin Hartley and they've interacted with me, when they see that name, but they think of me, they're going to be like, oh yeah, that's that, energetic redheaded guy, or then tense guy, the guy who loves talking about theater, because that's what I really love talking about. But they're going to think those things, right? So when somebody sees 52 launch, what you want is for them to think about those things.
Right.
What is 52 launch? What is it I love about it, right? That's the same thing with Apple. When you hear the word, you think about what you associate with that brand. That's part of why trademarks are so valuable. They capture that goodwill.
Absolutely. Look, I'm egging you on a little bit because I'm playing devil's advocate for my audience, because everybody in the entrepreneur, first of all, there's levels, right? I have inventors who have no concept of the fact that they actually have to take their product, make it, and then sell it over and over. That's an inventor way of thinking. They think someone else is going to buy their idea and make them millions of dollars. It's not even close to the truth. Or it's not a truth that I've seen in the 15 years I've been doing this. Then you have the inventor that turns into an entrepreneur and just wants to get their product built, and thinks they can go and hustle and sell themselves, and they totally miss the branding and marketing side. What you guys are is what I would call my progressive trademark guys, because you understand that with the trademark is part of the balance of going to market. You use the word, without SEO, does your trademark, will someone find you in a GTL feed, right? Is someone going to find you if you're not putting some money into Meta? Is someone going to find you? So the importance of marketing, and then the discovery of what you find behind that marketing has to be consistent, which is your brand.
Yeah.
So the trademark protects the person. What advice do you guys have about the brand? Give me the full circle of what I need to do or my clients need to do when they are thinking about specifically a product or even a business. I have no problem expanding that out there for you guys. But tell me what we need to really be thinking that we need to do so that I can be successful at creating that culture, that brand. Because again, I know it's a brand, and there's usually a brand, the person behind the brand. So we'll unpack that next.
Yeah. Well, I'll say number one, you have to kind of be true to whatever your mission is, right?
Yeah. 100%.
But beyond that, I think finding out who your demographic is, like who do you want to market your services to, your products to, and I think it starts with the name. Kevin mentioned arbitrary trademarks. My favorite are suggestive trademarks. You hear the word copper tone, you think about it for a second, you're like, oh, I get it. Now I understand what this product is and what it does, but it doesn't immediately convey to you what it is, so that it's on that descriptive, weaker end of the spectrum. So like figuring out how to promote your product from the very first second that somebody gets a chance to interact with it, that's a huge first impression, right? You want to land strong out of the gate there. But beyond that, again, I think that's where the creative aspects kick in that you guys can help out with quite a bit. I'm certainly not the marketing guru, I'm not the branding guru, but I can help spot check the legal aspects as you're unpacking, the ways to promote it and secure that. So,
but your plan is based on someone's marketing ability to go with the trademark, correct?
Well,
I mean, maybe not your plans, but your support is somewhere in that realm.
Yeah. So we start by identifying what's protectable. So I guess to zoom out just a little bit. Maybe there's an invention that is subject to patent protection. Maybe we talk about design patents before we hit the market because you actually lose the ability to do that over time. On the trademark side, it actually has multiple different levels. We might be talking about the name right out of the gate to lock down the word mark, have all fonts, all color schemes, whatever you want to do. But maybe you find out that your demographic is really drawn to a certain style of packaging. Maybe we can protect trade dress for the unique bottle that you use to sell your product formulation. So the more that the brand kind of finds its own identity, the more that's where an ongoing conversation with good IP counsel can really help you just kind of constantly be reassessing. Like, am I doing as much as I can to secure all the rights I possibly can for my brand as it continues to evolve?
So when we think about the strength of a trademark, there is a spectrum we look at it. We call it the distinctiveness spectrum. The more distinctive your trademark is, the stronger it is. So I'll walk through this quickly using gas stations as examples. So we start with generic, gas station. You cannot name a gas station and protect it in any meaningful way, right? That would have a chilling effect on commerce if only one gas station could call itself a gas station. So there are no rights in that. Now you can open a bar and call it the gas station because you're not selling gas. Back to what we talked about earlier, okay? The next level up from there are what we call descriptive marks. That would be like Travel Centers of America, right? It tells you exactly what it is. It's a travel center, it's in America, but it's not really distinctive. Over time, descriptive marks can become distinctive because going back to something I said earlier, it's about source identification. The day that a consumer recognizes that as a source of gas, then that's taken on a new meaning. Think Kentucky Fried Chicken. That's a trademark that's become very strong. But there was a time when we might be hanging out in Kentucky. I'd be like, hey, you want to go get some Kentucky Fried Chicken? And you might say, me where? I think about this a lot being from Nashville. Nashville hot chicken. Look, that's not an idea anybody can own at this point because so many people, it became the name for the product, right?
Outside of Buffalo, so Buffalo wings.
Absolutely, it's the same thing. So after descriptive marks, so there's this big bright line of demarcation. And every other type of trademark we talk about is what we call inherently distinctive. The next level, Derrick just mentioned, suggestive marks. So for a gas station, that'd be like mobile, right? It tells you something about what the service is going to allow you to do, what the product's going to allow you to do. And then the next level, what I just talked about, Apple, arbitrary marks. So for a gas station, that'd be like Shell, right? We know what Shells are, but when you use that as the name of your gas station, it becomes something new. And then the highest level, we call them fanciful marks. I don't always love them. Sometimes I call them scary robot names. These are invented words. So like Exxon for a gas station. When you invent the name, you're the only one who gives it meaning. It only exists as a trademark, right? So to I think answer the question you asked earlier though, when I talk to a client, if we get them early, now look, some people come to us, they already have a name, and they love it. Yeah. Another thing I tell people is if you love your name, I promise you, you can get it. We'll find a way. There's always a way. It may be money. Money may be the way, but there's a way. Now, otherwise, if you're still in the name development phase, this is what I suggest. Because it goes back to what I was talking about personality. Yep. I say, okay, what you really want to think about is what are the feelings you want people to have when they engage with your brand. Make a list of those feelings. Then make a list of words that make you have those feelings, that you associate with those feelings.
It's a great understanding.
And then I just start working through those lists of words, thinking about, can I put these in combinations? Is there one that stands out to me that I love? Or maybe I can push these together into what we sometimes call a telescope word, where you take two words that exist and push them into one. We could have done that with trust tree and had the T share, but it was already really close to trustee.
Yeah.
And we get a lot of requests for trust work, even though what we do are trademarks. But again, and then to your point, just to be clear, that we practice what we preach here. When we started, we get it. When we started this firm, it was a completely different, radical idea. The founding partners and I, when we started it, we worked at a big firm. We were doing something completely different with this. And we saw, like your clients see, and like all the entrepreneurs and small businesses we work with see, it's death by 1,000 cuts. Yeah. And so domain names can be one of them. We purchased trust-tree.com and trusttreetrademarks.com. I reached out to try to buy trusttree.com. And the number was too big for my taste at that time.
Right.
And it wasn't until 5 years later that we acquired trusttree.com. But now, we ultimately did. So I do want to be clear. I do see value in getting it. Absolutely. But you've got to make smart decisions as you're growing your brand. It's death by 1,000 cuts. And to me, so long as nobody's sitting on your domain offering services or goods that are similar to the ones you intend to offer, you are already operating from a safe space as far as potentially protecting that as a trademark and moving forward with that as your brand name.
Yeah, so I'll give you a couple of not curveballs, but like things that I've learned. So everything you said, I totally 100% buy in. Down the road, first of all, we did a lot of that, right? The dot, the extension abbreviations, whatever at the end. I'm not sure. My gut tells me that Google will still favor a .com over any other dot at the end of the business. The challenge I have is when you see something that's similar that already has like a good amount of content in, so I kind of avoid that. But let's say we get past those two things. The punch in the face for an entrepreneur bringing a product to market is when they go stand in front of a buyer or someone. One of the female people on Shark Tank has a rule. I'm going to be careful, like not bring names in. She's the blonde, very successful. But her rule is that like I need to tell me what the product does in the name, and like the dumbing it down for the consumer, where it also fits in with two cool words. Like that's where, and again, I want the right thing, but I'm also trying to avoid that inventor or entrepreneur who stands in front of the opportunity and they get punched in the face because they're told the name doesn't tell the person what it does. Sure. So finding that kind of, that's to me the full circle. When we have that, that's why the naming for us is not the most difficult thing. It's the first thing, because if we get that wrong, it's got to move forward. Once we have that right, it's hard to encompass everything that we just talked about, but I think this is why we're having this conversation, is to find when is the right time, what's the right way to do it, how do we do it for the end result that I need. I agree. We can buy a domain in 5 years from now, we're selling a ton of product and the revenue's there. Can I switch a trademark midway through or in 5 years? I know that with a patent, I can't. The minute I disclose it, I can't register it as or file a patent. But trademarks, help me understand that part. What's the flexibility there? What's the rules that I need to understand in trademarks so people can navigate that properly, and then we can make decisions to go faster?
Yeah, so I'll say there's a nuance. It's a rule called tagging, where eventually over time you can picture certain logos that look, dating back. I think there's a sugar brand that was around since the 1920s, and slowly but surely the fashion, the wardrobe has been updated. Yeah. It's still the same trademark, even though it's slowly changed.
You can look at Apple.
Yeah,
you can see their Apple insignia. They slowly but surely have changed over time.
So I would say if people think about it as somewhat of a bullseye, if you have your epicenter and you just slowly, gradually change a little bit, but you still retain that gravity, I think that you're probably okay to say that your brand, is still, wholly true to its roots. If you were to totally rebrand and you go in a totally different direction that has totally different elements, theoretically your date of first use is tied to whatever the trademark was. So if Nike on day one sold their products as Nike products, day two they sold them, under the slogan "Just Do It." Day three they rolled out the swoosh. Theoretically, those would be 3 different dates of first use. So they might have to consider whether or not other people were doing something similar on each day that those were rolled out. But I do think it goes back to what you were saying before. What is our core message that we want to relay to our customers, and how can we add layers to our brand that over time only add value? And that's really one of the truest perks of trademarks. They don't expire. They only get stronger over time. The more you build out that brand, the more the hooks in people's brains get deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
I do want to circle back to your kind of Shark Tank example, because I've heard that on there before.
Yeah.
And it's not that I disagree. It's that I think people need to know what their goals are and know what it takes to get there. So when you use a descriptive trademark, like that person might suggest some people need to do, something that describes the product or service. Again, think Kentucky Fried Chicken. And again, I'll point back to Nashville Hot Chicken. There were a couple early purveyors. This place, Prince's, is kind of credited as the place where it originated. There's another place, Bolton's, that might have something to say about that. But if you look nationwide at what's happening, there's this other brand called Hattie B's that might be the most well-known at this point. And that's because neither of those initial businesses set out to make Nashville Hot Chicken their name.
Right.
Like the Colonel did ultimately with Kentucky Fried Chicken, because that was not the name of his establishment at first. They just sold Kentucky Fried Chicken. Somebody there realized this opportunity, that this is what everybody's calling this anyway. Let's grab hold of it, right? Now, if you do that, say somebody had wanted to make Nashville Hot Chicken their trademark, when you have something descriptive, you have to police your rights. You have to be very careful, because if you let people start using the same name, you can't roll that back, like what's happened with Nashville Hot Chicken, right? So that's why I'm always hesitant to tell a client to use a descriptive trademark unless you know that you are kind of the first to use it. You're going to be using it in the way she's going to, which is like, I'm going on national TV and I'm trying to sell 1 million units. Well, once you do that, you've got an argument that you've acquired distinctiveness.
Okay.
And you've got stronger rights in your trademark once you acquire distinctiveness in it. But until then, I still disagree. There are kind of two schools of thoughts about.
Well, I love your disagreement, because look, all I'm trying to avoid is the person that's invested money in us, invested money in you, invested money along the way, and then one person says did it all wrong.
Sure.
Right? And so that's the conversation I'm trying to, since you guys are the experts, I am not, I'm in total agreement with everything you're saying, until we get in front of that person that says, no, this is wrong, this is what we do. So I agree. If you're going to go for it, go for it. Do be distinctive. I love the list that you guys gave everybody. Let's figure out what that emotion is. Let's do what that is. Let's own that real estate. And then through that, it does take a while to build your brand. And I understand for retail purposes, or maybe on a shelf, people want to look at a box and see what it does. There's ways that packaging can do that. So let's use the name first.
Absolutely. I like to use Apple to talk about this. Here's why. So there are two schools of thought out there about how certain brands roll out new products. One school of thought is we're going to name every new product we roll out something new. And the cost to get consumers to recognize that new name as this product can be high. So think Apple. There was a time when they named every new product. The iMac, the MacBook, the iPhone, iTunes. Of course, they used this III strategy for a while. And ultimately, Apple, one of the most valuable trademarks in the world, somebody there, I don't know who, but somebody there made a really smart decision, which is they said, we're Apple. Why would we name every new product? Let's just use the generic name after Apple. Apple TV, Apple Music, Apple Vision Pro. Everything is now doing what Shark Tank would say, tell me what it is, but you're putting Apple in front of it. And you can do that. That's right, because that's where so much value is. And people know, oh, it's Apple Watch. I love Apple. I want that watch, right? Instead of giving it a new name.
Right.
So you can still really have it both ways. You can have your distinctive name and use the generic product name in combination with that and sell the product.
That's a great strategy, because that's exactly what, look, at the end of the day, we're, in my space, we're dealing with entrepreneurs, small business owners, like no one with a Rockefeller name calls us to get a product to market. So we're working on very limited budgets to do a lot of development, research, product design, trademarks. The list can go on and on. This could be a very expensive venture. Our goal is to say, how do we break it down so that it can be fit? And to me, the goal is always, I want to get revenue as quick as I can. So get the minimal viable product out there that is somewhere between that and the 2.0. Like, we want a great product, because I don't want to keep going to iterate. But when do I need to put a patent in, and what's the process of that patent so I can protect myself, and when do I need to trademark? Because one of the questions that's coming up here is going to be about, when is an entrepreneur, in what order do they need to begin filing all this stuff?
Yeah, so I'll say, in terms of timeliness, your trademark rights can actually start to accrue the moment you start putting your product or service out there under whatever name you choose.
Okay.
There's a dual system called common law rights, and then the system that we advise people to consider would be federal protection by going through the USPTO, filing a trademark application, getting it registered. If you go the latter route, you get presumption of nationwide use as of the filing date for most applications. On the other hand, you have patent protection, which is actually barred if you don't play your cards right. So the moment that you have started selling a product, if you put it out there and it's become public knowledge based on you disclosing it without adequate protections in place, you start your own clock for one, and in some countries you've actually barred yourself completely from securing patent protection. They have this concept called absolute novelty. So the moment that you think that you have something that's patent eligible, I would begin a conversation with an attorney. Just start exploring whether or not you can get a provisional in place.
Yeah.
It's a one-year placeholder that allows you to go and kind of refine it, like you were saying, and still claim that priority date, looking backwards to whatever subject matter was disclosed in that provisional application.
Well, this is where we align. So, and I always look at where the alignments are, right? Because at the end of the day, this is a duality process. I can't control. There's two schools of thought. Someone wakes up in the morning and says, I need to protect this, and the other half wake up in the morning and say, I need to do this. This is where they converge for the first time, right? Someone hands me a patent that's poorly written and it's based on thought without conceptually working through some of these flaws is something. I can't make a product that someone patented without understanding how product is made. So I'm usually now having to what's the word? Like I have to revision the patent process or the product. To me, the optimal point is let us do the sketch, let us do the design, let's eliminate the under non-disclosure with our clients, so no one knows this, we're not disclosing it to them. But now we've kind of worked out, we've eliminated 9,770 different ways to make this, to focus on the 60 or 70 ways it can be designed, sketch it out. By design review 2, we are at the 1 or 2 ways that this is going to be made, and we kind of have a pretty good idea of what could be patentable in this process. Sometimes it's the way we're making a mechanism to put things together, and it's usually it coincides with our lowest point of cost.
Sure.
Meaning no one thought about how to do this the way we just did, and that's saving us a ton of money in the production cycle. And so, can we patent that item? Sometimes it's a general. Can we do it all? A lot of times it's design, but that's usually the first moment that we can then utilize the patent office and actually go with a provisional patent, which gives you a year. Correct.
Correct.
And back to Derrick's point, I think with patents in particular, when you have the idea, especially if you're going to disclose it to anybody, that is the time. You need to call the attorney because you have 1 year from disclosure in the United States to file either a provisional or a full patent application. If you file the provisional, then you get an additional year to convert that to your full utility patent application. Trademarks, on the other hand,
super important. That is
super important.
not clear in the world that I live in.
That's an absolute bar, and that's just your own clock.
How do you prove that? I think that's the misnomer is that people don't know that.
Well, it's always in the context of enforcement, right?
Right. Okay.
So just like certain pitch competitions will tell you, I want a name that describes everything. Well, good luck going and enforcing your rights when you have a merely descriptive mark.
So you're saying that if I went and pitched the idea to somebody, okay, let's use me as an example. Someone pitches me their idea.
Yeah. You're
telling me that combination of conversation, that person now only has a year to go and file a patent.
The moment you make public disclosure of something, and that again is your own novelty bar. So that's when you put the information out there yourself. If you don't put it out there yourself and somebody files a patent application the day after, you come up with the idea, it's first to file at the USPTO. So they beat you, and just because you came up with it first does not mean that it's your idea that you can now lock down.
Okay.
But that's on the patent front. I do want to talk about trademarks because it is different.
We're going there next. So last thing I just want to unpack there. So basically the risk here, and again, I'd say in all candidness, right? This isn't because I know this. Most people, when they call with the initial idea, don't know and they're looking for validation.
Yeah.
So they are disclosing this to a lot of people in conversation until they realize, oh, I might want to stop doing that, and then put on the very first page of our website, you guys can take a look, not on our website, on the form that we get to fill out, the very first thing I do is acknowledge I'm not here to steal ideas. I want to acknowledge right now that by filling out this form, I protect you, and I will send a non-disclosure because I want to have this conversation fast, but I was unaware that could trigger.
Well, I think you did it the right way. So number one, you wouldn't be in this business if you were stealing people's ideas.
Right, yeah.
So number two, the fact that it is a confidential conversation, you can have certain things that don't trigger that date that I was talking about.
Okay.
Public
I think we do, but we'll offline we'll learn those and we'll put more of that protection in place. Because like at the end of the day, I understand the person, the inventor, the entrepreneur, and that's the stage, right? Like an inventor needs to turn into an entrepreneur that needs to learn how to run a business. And without those three things, the business part is the trademark for me in my world, and help me and enlighten me. Because for me, the reason why I look to get everyone a trademark is because one of the biggest marketplaces today is this little thing called Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
They used to sell books, and now they sell everything. In order to be on Amazon and get all the bells and whistles without going through the 2-year probationary period, you overcome that with a trademark.
So what Peter's talking about is to get on the Amazon brand registry.
Yes,
You have to have a federally registered trademark. Not only that, it must be distinctive. You cannot have a descriptive mark and get it registered on the principal register, which is what is required. So if you choose a descriptive mark, you cannot get on the Amazon brand registry. Despite what
I think we're doing it right. We seem to get a trademark, we get a trademark number, and then but let's clarify.
Despite
I've been
what,
wrong several times.
Borrowing the demographic that sells only on QVC.
Despite what some people on Shark Tank may be telling people. Okay. So this is something very few people know. There is a principal register of trademarks with the federal government, but there is also a supplemental register of trademarks. But these are all held in the same database, and there's only one little place where you'll look and you'll see register, and it might say principal or supplemental. Most people wouldn't even look there. You get a registration certificate. People might think it's the same thing, but it's not. The principal register is for distinctive marks. The supplemental register is for descriptive or ornamental marks. Which is where you're just using something.
Let's define that in layman's terms, because everyone here that's listening to this podcast is learning.
Sure.
Break that down into something.
So a descriptive mark again would be like Kentucky Fried Chicken, but before it acquired distinctiveness.
Okay.
Right. It's merely descriptive.
When we started using that, it was merely descriptive of the exact product.
Gotcha.
That's right. 100 years later, people know it as a source of data.
Right.
And that transition is what we're talking about for the principal versus.
And so it's just like National Hot Chicken.
Right.
National Hot Chicken. So the fact that they didn't take the extra steps to turn it into a federally recognized
trademark. Well, it's because they didn't really use it as a trademark itself. They used it to describe the product that the business was selling, rather than use it as a source identifier for a whole class of products or services.
So the Big Mac, the Whopper, that somewhere in that process, someone took those and trademarked them?
Well, what's a Big Mac? If I just said Big Mac to you, you wouldn't think that that's a burger. So that's a distinctive mark.
Gotcha.
But if I say Kentucky Fried Chicken, what are you going to think? They're selling, right? Yeah. So that makes it descriptive. Gotcha. So when your mark is descriptive, though, you can register it on this supplemental register. And over time, it can acquire distinctiveness. Once it acquires distinctiveness, you can then go back to the trademark office, apply again for the principal register, and argue that our descriptive mark has now acquired distinctiveness. And I'll tell you briefly what the requirement generally looks like. 5 years of continuous use without evidence of any other party using the same name for the same products or services. That is sort of the bare minimum. Yeah. But the truth is, early in my career, I saw the USPTO often approving people who came back after 5 years on the supplemental register and applied for registration on the principal register, but I have not seen that in years. In years now, I have not seen them grant one just on that. Now, you have 20 years to use, 30 years to use, 40 years to use.
So the supplemental register that would be KFC or
Kentucky Fried Chicken, that's right. Marks like that. Before it acquires distinctiveness. But I want to get back to the Amazon point.
Yeah.
Because I'm just really kind of taking some shots back at what we were saying. Why there are reasons you want to be very careful about choosing a descriptive mark. Now, look, if you have an investor willing to give you millions of dollars, if you have a descriptive mark, I'd say go for it, go right ahead. That's enough money to invest. Also, because the way we prove acquired distinctiveness is not just based on the amount of time it's used, but it really is based on how recognized it is as source identifying of a particular brand, right? And so once it becomes a source identifier, you can argue you have acquired distinctiveness. And the way we prove that is amount of revenue, or amount of money spent on advertising and marketing, unsolicited third-party recognition. in addition to the number of years of use. But so the brand registry is super important. We work with tons of clients that are Amazon sellers trying to get on the brand registry. So we traffic in this all the time. And I want to get back to the initial thing you asked, which was, okay, well, when do you do this, right? So something Derrick mentioned earlier. When it comes to trademarks don't exist because you, the business owner, say, I now have a trademark, I'm applying. Really, getting back to when I said the sort of, 40,000 foot view of what trademarks are, they're source identifiers. And they're really there to protect consumers. We want consumers to know, oh, I see Nike on that product. I have a feel for what the quality is going to be, what the price point is going to be, how comfortable it's going to be, right? So what we can't do is allow somebody to open a place called Nike Cowboy Boots, even if Nike's never sold a cowboy boot ever.
Right.
Because what's a consumer going to think? I run into you on the street in Nashville. Yeah, you see me wearing cowboy boots. Kevin, what are those? Oh, they're Nike Cowboy Boots. You're not going to be like, oh, that's a new company. You're going to be like, oh, Nike's selling cowboy boots now, right?
Yeah.
So we're really, trademarks are about protecting consumers as much as anything. It's a real windfall often to the brands that they're so valuable. So from the day you start using something in commerce to identify your business as a source of goods or services, you have a trademark. Now, you have common law rights at that point. As Derrick mentioned, common law rights are territorial in nature, and that's going to be determined by a court. So what happens is if you don't go register your trademark federally, say I'm in Nashville, I launch a business, I call it Trust Tree. Don't register it federally. I'm offering legal services. Somebody then in California, a few weeks later launches their Trust Tree offering legal services. I may lose to them because what may happen is the court may say, well, yeah, Kevin, you were using Trust Tree, but your rights were limited to Nashville. Or maybe it'd be Davidson County where Nashville is. Maybe it'd be Middle Tennessee. Maybe it'd be the state of Tennessee. It'd be the southeast, east of the Mississippi. Who knows? That's right. So the reason you apply federally is when you register your trademark federally, you get a nationwide presumption of validity and enforceability for your trademark. Now, the general rule is that the first party to use a trademark in commerce has the priority right to that mark for the associated goods and services, including other goods and services a consumer might think, like my Nike Cowboy Boots example, a natural expansion, maybe just beyond what you sell into things a consumer might think a business like yours would. Okay?
Clear. So the person who files for the federal, or the person who uses it first,
as a general rule, has the priority right.
Okay.
There's one exception. That is if nobody has used the trademark yet for those products or services, then the first person to file their application with the federal government will have the priority right, assuming they ultimately register their trademark. So here's how it works. You can either file what we call a use-based application with the federal government. That's where your mark's already in use in commerce, and now you're just asking the federal government to recognize your rights and register that trademark. Or you can file what's called an intent to use application. That's where you say, we haven't used this yet, but we have a bona fide intent to do so in the future. And we want to go ahead and start accruing our rights now. And I'll just give you another example.
That's probably 100% of our clients.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You get a constructive use date as
that's right.
Okay. So you haven't done it yet, but you're going to eventually once it registers.
Well, and for us, you said it's the presumed. We're going to start. Sorry, say that again.
Well, let me just run through an example. I double hit it. So say that we're going to launch some new really cool golf product. I was talking to some of your employees earlier, and they were telling me about some golf products y'all have. They're very exciting, right? And I'm going to call it Trust Tree.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm launching my golf product. I'm going to call it Trust Tree. I'm really excited about it. It's something that can be used to clean golf clubs. And okay, I start going around town and I'm telling everybody, hey, look at this new device I have. It's going to clean your clubs. I call it Trust Tree, right? Well, maybe one of those people sees that, hears it. I haven't developed it yet. I'm not selling it yet. They're like, oh, this is a great idea. I'm going to take this to market faster. I've got the supply chain to do it. I'm going to take it to market. I'm going to take it to market as soon as I can, and I'm going to beat this guy to the punch, right? And maybe they do that, and maybe I haven't filed an application yet for it. Well, they might have the priority right now to that mark. I mean, I might be able to come in and argue some things like unclean hands and get into a nice expensive lawsuit I'm not prepared to get into. Well, the reason we have this system is to encourage people to say, go ahead and file. Go ahead and file your intent to use application. That way you put your marker in the ground. You don't have to be worried that you go out and start talking to people about it and they beat you to the punch, right? Because if I were to come up with the idea first, but then you file first, you win. If I were to come up with the idea first and you use first, you win. So we encourage people to file first where they can. Now, something we said earlier, though, it is death by 1,000 cuts. We do understand that. And some people, like you said, it's like the idea, some people are like, idea first. Some people are like, I got to get it done first. Right?
There's so much chicken or the egg conversations that go on in all of this, right? Like, which do you do first? And so, look, our philosophy has been, let's educate everybody in the entire process.
Yeah.
Because the biggest challenge I have is when someone thinks they've done it all and they haven't even started. You know, I'm the first person that's to tell them you haven't done anything, and now I'm the villain. I don't like being the villain. I want to explain to everybody, look, here's the journey. The first thing you have to decide is, you know, in my world, does this even make money for you? Like, is this an idea that someone will buy? Is it something that, you know, can be replicated? Can we make it? Once those are done, and I know that there's a good degree of chance that they can be sold and the market's looking for it, that's the only time I would take any revenue or offer to get into a contract with the client. Mm-hmm. And so, but in that journey, the conversation of patents, trademarks, obviously the LLCs, the starting businesses, and all the other business side to what you're about to embark on. That's what I love having you guys on. This is an incredible experience. It's an incredible amount of information for everybody to learn and understand. And it's more to just ask the right questions.
Yeah.
And then use the experts to say, how do we line this up so it works? So I'd say 100% of our clients are intend to use, right? Because we know that someone hired us with the intent to get a product and turn it into a business. And some people that are early on in our stage are like, well, how do I know this is going to sell? Why would I start writing a check for that kind of money? Because the time is not on my side. There's things like you just brought up, like the minute you start sharing, the minute you have intent to move forward, you got to move forward.
Yeah.
And if you have any doubt about moving forward, don't move forward. Like, keep it a secret. Do what you need to do to evaluate yourself with your group of friends. But when you decide to move forward, you need a team of people. I have 65 here. You guys walked in here. It's buzzing on a Monday.
Yeah.
Right? We're busy. This isn't something the AI can do. It's not. I'm not hiding employees. Like, this is all hard work that 65 people need to do. Plus attorneys, plus business attorneys, plus marketing people, plus the journey going forward. So
Absolutely.
Just understand the whole process, right? And this is what I like about you guys, especially, and I give Jack a lot of credit for bringing you guys in. And again, we talk to a lot of attorneys, but in your guys' case, the specificity here is you guys are business minded as well as trademark and protectionary in your realm. So
absolutely,
the Amazon conversation for me, short sighted, it's like I just need the number, plug it in, and go. So help me educate myself and my clients. Like, it's more than that, right? Like, I just need the number, and
the serial number to set up brand registry.
Oh,
yeah, the brand registry. Apparently, all I've needed, or maybe I've done more, and I give the attorneys I have credit. But my understanding was that once we have the number in, we're good.
Well, so I'll say Amazon is above the law.
Yeah, no, in total.
But so it's been a bit of a moving target with what their systems have entailed.
Okay.
So, the brand registry set up at one point in time, I think you could have what would be a merely descriptive word, but if you protected it as a logo, I think they allowed that.
Oh, I think they still are allowing that. In fact, this is, if we go through the brief history of how I've seen it develop, when the brand registry first launched, you had to have a registered mark on the principal register, and it had to be a standard character mark. So just to back up a word mark. It has to be the word. It could not be a logo that incorporated the words. Now, because I think of some of the issues with some descriptive marks that would have the distinctive design elements as part of the logo, they started allowing people who had registrations for their logos incorporating these words to use those as a basis for the brand registry as well. But it used to be that you had to have registrations. Now, over time, they've evolved even further to allow you to get a conditional approval to operate on the brand registry. Excuse me.
Yeah.
When you only have the serial number, which you get, and let's back up. When you file a trademark application with the federal government, you get a serial number immediately.
Right.
Also, sometimes called your application number.
Yeah.
The registration process, it can take a year or more. I mean, right now, the fastest it will go is about 11 months. So you don't get a registration number until it's registered. And in fact, something we talked about off podcast was when you get to use the registered trademark symbol. And that's exactly that. You are not supposed to use that circle with an R inside of it until your mark registers. Until that point, what we recommend people do, use the TM, because that's giving the world notice of your common law rights in the trademark that you're claiming.
Gotcha.
But once you have that number, that's what you need. And we're here to help people get that.
Yeah, well, let's unpack a little bit more, because my understanding was the word marks, those are hard to get.
Well, this
Depends on the mark.
it depends on the mark, going back to what we said. If it's a fanciful mark and you've invented the word, it may not be so hard to get. But
so
often
invented words that pertain to like Apple, but in the technology space, very doable, it's a word mark.
Yep.
Having a word be descriptive of what the product is, those are probably the ones
it's very hard.
Those are the ones that I'm going to say.
Very hard.
So Kentucky Fried Chicken, until it got to that point that it became the normal, it became synonymous with the actual.
If my
Because of
thing,
the exclusivity, because it was
Right.
so, ubiquitously tied to a specific source. I'll give you just a real example that I've had to deal with in the past 6 weeks. I have a very well-funded client who is spending over $1.5 million a month on ads. If you watch sports, you've probably seen this brand. They've tried to enforce a mark that's merely descriptive, and it is an uphill battle, and it can be a losing effort. So even if you're super well funded, even if you have all the venture capital backing and whatever, it still is just not doing yourself any favors because the mark is merely descriptive day one. You're just constantly fighting a million battles because people are using these terms in their descriptive capacities as you would expect in English language, and that's not really what trademark law is designed to protect.
Yeah.
So.
Well, look at that. There's probably two sides to that, right? There's a business conversation that he's going to fight for as long as he can because he's generating the revenue he can. That's kind of the argument I fall into. It's like, hey, I don't want to kick the can down the road. I want to do what's enough, but with limited funds, I need to. If revenue doesn't start coming in, they're not. We have to fund this through sales. And again, somewhere along the way, that balance is back and forth. So I love that conversation.
I do want to talk about the value proposition though, because I really do believe this. So our firm, we charge a flat fee of $975 to prepare and file a trademark application.
Okay.
The government filing fee is $350 per trademark class, typically. Most people need one class. Trademark classes, there are 45 of them. I'll just give you some quick examples. Class 25, that covers clothing.
Yeah.
If you sell a clothing product, you're in class 25, $350 fee, right? So, just with what we charge, say it's $1,350 all in. Now, our processes, we include with that a search report. We include with that all attorney communicate. I mean, people are going to hear me on this podcast. I'll spend hours talking to you about your trademarks. You're not getting charged anything additional. And, I'll have those conversations with you before you place an order with us. But the point I'm trying to make is we try to make that cost the cost. And there are a few things that can cost money along the way, but not many. And we try not to charge much for those if they happen to come up. But this is what I want to point out. There are very few things in this world that you can invest about $1,000 to $1,500 in that might be worth millions, if not billions of dollars. The most valuable trademarks in the world are worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Coca-Cola's trademark portfolio is more valuable than every single physical asset Coke owns. Factories, they own trucks, they own almost every vending machine you see. Right? And the value proposition, I know it's set by 1,000 cuts. But look, the things you need to spend your money on.
Yeah.
You need to form your entity.
Yeah.
Really, that's not that expensive.
No.
In most states now, you can file for an LLC online with the Secretary of State's office for somewhere between like $50 and $300.
Yeah.
Form your entity. You go get your EIN next. That's your tax identification number. You can do that the next day on irs.gov. That is free. I mean, you can hire an attorney to do it. You can hire other services to do it, but you can go do it yourself. It is free. It is easy. You do those two things. You go to a bank. You open a bank account. That's free. Put some money in it. And then in my opinion, one of the early things you should be looking at is figuring out your IP. Trademarks, patents, do I need them? If I do, what's the cost? How do I get at least that money to get that ball rolling? Because again, we're talking something that, and y'all know, you've got some clients that have done amazing things. Their trademarks, that's where the value is. Go back to my Google example.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to buy it. They're buying the name. They are buying, maybe there's some customer lists. Maybe there's some other IP, but really, what are they buying?
No, look at just for everybody watching. I live in that chicken and egg space every day. People ask me, how do I know? What do I know? Like, if I could predict these things, I would charge you $1 million for the minute of conversation I'm about to have with you.
Oh yeah.
I can't because I don't know. I mean, I know the process. I know the path. I know that the affordability is always a question. If we could do it all, we'd all be self-employed. The challenge is that it's a step. So I agree with you. I'm totally on board. This is why we're having more of these conversations. The last 4 years, our journey has been aligning better and better with the patent and legal side of this, because the other side of that coin is, how do I get the product made? How do I get started? How much is the tool? Holy crap, I had no idea it was that much, right? So my job is to navigate a very tough process that's 8,000 miles away with 90% of the manufacturing that still gets done. Then we get tariff conversations that scare the crap out of everybody. But if you have the ability to get started at any point, in any direction, whether you start with a trademark, whether you start with a patent, whether you start with calling out, like the process can't be circumvented. It needs to be processed through.
I just have to mention, we have a client with a very, very, very exciting tool related to tariff calculation.
Oh,
And
really?
we should talk about that because
Okay.
they're I think, going to go a long way to helping people figure out how to navigate tariffs. But, even saying that little conversation aside, trademarks, patents, copyrights, these things, when you register them, they are assets. Not only that, you can use those as collateral to get loans. So banks routinely record liens against intellectual property. So you don't want to put your house up, you don't want to put your factory up. Guess what? If you have valuable intellectual property, you can use that, you can leverage that. So there are all sorts of reasons why, for an owner, these things can take on outsized value very quickly.
Yeah. It's a competitive advantage in some ways, right? If we're talking patents, you get somewhat of an anti-monopoly where you have the right to preclude other people from doing whatever it is your patent covers. Talking about trademarks, you get to stop anybody from using a mark that's confusingly similar to yours. We haven't really talked about
Well, for
copyrights.
import, I answer that right now. I have more teeth with the trademark. If someone
Yeah.
infringes my trademark, I can actually stop the carbon.
You record it with customs. I mean, and that's exactly why these processes exist.
Whereas a patent, they allow it in, I have to go now fight in court.
And
for patent
we charge a few $100s to record somebody's trademark with Customs and Border Protection. And for that very tiny fee, they will seize any counterfeit product that they find coming into the country and destroy it. It is well worth your while to do that.
Yeah, no, look at that. That's super insightful. Now we got to go back and make sure that we've let our clients know they got to go back and talk to their trademark attorneys to get that done. Because that's awesome.
And one more thing about trademarks, and part of why I really love trademarks is
It's very obvious.
trademarks are the only thing. Patents aren't this way. Copyrights aren't this way. Trademarks can exist in perpetuity. So long as you're using it, you can maintain those rights, and you can just keep renewing the registration and renewing the registration over and over and over again. And so it's one of those things where, businesses that go out of business, Bed Bath & Beyond, their intellectual property assets were bought out of the bankruptcy for $30 million.
I'll give you Blockbuster. I'll give you Toys R Us. I'll give you, there's a ton of valuable names out there that the brand is there, the business is dead.
Yeah.
Right? I'm sure Barnes & Noble's in that conversation. I saw now that they're back and active, so someone's put them back into the game. I mean, look at that. I never said, I agree with you guys on that. Here's the challenge. Somebody wakes up in the morning, has an idea, right? We're both on the same side of the argument, just on different sides of the coin. We want them to move forward. The reality is, we just talked about, before you even started, how do you plan your exit, right? And so that's where the value of these conversations come in, is that, I wish everybody was more optimistic about their ideas, because I've seen it. I understand the process. I understand some risk. Our job is to mitigate it. Our job is to, let's evaluate it quickly and say yes or no. If it's not a business conversation, then it's not my ballpark. Maybe I'm missing it, but I've said no to some products that have done quite well.
Sure.
And, and again, thankfully they've still done them with us, but I was like, I don't know how that's going to sell. And I made them sign to say, like, I don't see this. And they're like, I do, and I'm good. I'm here to support the entrepreneur, the inventor, the business owner to move forward. But realistically, this is a business. And if you're going to think about exit, you want to have proper patent protections. You want to have the trademarks in place, all of them that you can get, the design, whatever you can do to protect the IP, because the business might pivot, but the name, people don't realize Toyota was a lube manufacturer. They made carpets and textiles and moved into the automotive industry. Same name though, they had changed that. That was their brand. They were well known, at least in the Asian markets, and then came over here. But yeah, help me process that. Like when you guys probably deal with other clients that I don't deal with. So the higher level clients that you have, tell me how they think so that my clients can help, and our clients together that are in the infancy stages of becoming those bigger products. How should they be thinking?
So we have one client that has a $1 billion plus market cap. They decided to do a rebrand a few years ago, but this is how far ahead they're thinking with their strategic planning, right? They reached out to us. It was probably 5 years ago. They came up with 6 names. Actually, they gave me a list of about 20 names.
Right.
We then filed applications for 6 of those names because of the issues we're talking about. You never know, you might get a refusal from the trademark office. You might have somebody pop up who opposes your application because despite all the searching you may do to determine whether or not a name's available, somebody might own a mom and pop store in Ketchikan, Alaska that's been operating under the same name for 20 years already. And going back to the conversation we had about first use, they used first. They have common law rights that predate yours, right? So, you're trying to navigate for all these things, and then they're not sure what they want to use. Maybe they want to market test. They're going to do some surveying. They're going to, hire some outfits to go out and test this with different people, whatever it may be. But they reached out to us about 5 years before they rolled out the name they finally went with out of these 6 that they had to supply.
Not to disclose the dollar amount. That sounds expensive.
Well, not with us, because I told you what we charge,
Well,
and we did 6
that.
applications for them, and I ran searches for all 20 of those marks for them, and I didn't charge them.
But internally, they have some other costs.
Oh,
to make that
I mean,
decision.
the-
so that's
the
just your
amount-
cost, but the overall cost that a business decided that isn't a direct revenue source, but a plan for long term. That's what I think. That's the difference between a business owner conversation and an entrepreneur. Entrepreneur is just trying to get their shortcut his way or her way to a point where they can start selling. Tell me the nearsightedness, or again, help educate my clients on the nearsightedness.
Minimal viable product, and this is how I feel. In fact, I was telling some of your colleagues earlier about how sometimes we run into these well-capitalized clients who've been able to go out and raise a bunch of money, but they haven't been able to bring anything concrete to market yet. And sometimes they call us and they just keep wanting us to file new trademark applications. Because I think they have some investors who want to know what they're doing and they want to show that they're doing something.
Right. Yeah.
Right? But that's not the way to me, to your point.
Yeah.
When I talk to somebody who's launching something and they're really excited, they've got a bunch of ideas and they've got a logo, they've got a slogan, they've got a brand name. Oh, well, we're doing this product right now, but we think in the future we're going to do these 5 other products that might fall into these other trademark classes that would entail additional government filing fees, right? This is what I say to everyone. See, start with your standard character mark for your core product or service. That's it. That's what I would pursue. That's what I would try to register. I would do one, right? But start there. So it's like building a home, right? Building a business. You're just laying the foundation to begin with.
Yeah.
And this is one of your cornerstones. So lay that cornerstone. We can add to it later. Trust me, we will add everything you need as you have revenue coming in. And then what I generally suggest is when revenue justifies adding something, that's where we start adding to it.
That's where it's so aligned. So that cornerstone is, to me, I want the core value propositions of the thing that we're making that lines up with the trademark that we're trying to say, this is what we are selling.
Yeah.
And so when those two line up, that's our MVP. Or, again, in our world, I do have the resources to make this really look like a product that's been in market 6 or 7 years. And so, we go through a lot of extra steps, but that's the alignment. That's where people need to start thinking. Like, if you're going to do this, the thought isn't about, oh, I need to come up with an idea. No, we need to get hyper-focused on the idea and the trademark and the purpose it serves to somebody and the value proposition it gives to the consumer and the solution that it solves. From there, that's the package that you have that you guys, that we can all run with this and make it successful in a very short period of time.
Absolutely.
It's when you have all those divergence and I can do this, I can also do this, and I can do that. Whoa, which is the best one?
And that's where it goes back to good counsel, right? I mean, having a team of people.
Yeah.
And I like to use accountants as an example. Like,
100%.
do your own taxes, sure, you cut your own hair too.
Yeah.
So you might as well surround yourself by people who are very good at what they do, know that the best CEOs outsource parts of the job that maybe they could do themselves.
Yeah.
They put the right players on the board to make the moves that they need to make. And it keeps you dialed in. As an entrepreneur, you might be, excitable. You might be wanting to chase all these different iterations of what you want this vision to become in 10 years. But how do you get there is a question. And it's one step at a time, exactly like
What does an attorney do during the trademark search that a normal person couldn't? There's one.
Yeah, I'll take that one to start. So I want to talk about how a lot of law firms do things briefly. And I'll talk about the firm I used to work at. I used to work at a large mid-sized firm down in Nashville, and people would call us about applying for trademarks, and they would ask us about running a search. And I'd have to tell them, oh yeah, we can run a search for you, but it's going to be $1,500 to $2,500.
Yes.
And most people, going back to what we talked about, would be like, no, that's okay, no search. And so then we file their application, and then we get a refusal from the trademark office citing a very similar trademark, right? And they'd come back to us and say, whoa, why didn't you tell me there was something else out there? We'd say, oh, well, here's this email. You said you didn't want us to run a search. Oh, it just made my skin crawl. I mean, that's part of the foundation of what we started here. We're big believers in flat fees.
Right.
We're big believers in everybody needs a trademark search before we file. Now, what can an average person do, right? Average person. What can a person without the tools we have do?
Knowledge, experience, years, wisdom.
Yeah. But what people can do that we would do too, if they don't, I suggest clients do this on their own though. Go to search engines, type in the name, go to social media, type in the name, go to the domain registrar, see if you can get the name. Those are all things that everybody can do. What we can do is we pay a fee to a third party that provides searching tools that we use, that we have vetted, that we think are great for helping us identify potential conflicts with our clients' marks. Now, many law firms like to charge people a lot of money for those searches, even though we pay one flat fee for access to that tool. We have decided that we are folding that in to that flat fee cost. We spread across every single client we have, that $975, so that we can run a search every time. We don't charge any additional because I want to know. I don't want to lead you down that path.
Yeah,
But I will say this: you can do comprehensive searches too. You can use tools that are even more comprehensive than the one we use. We use a very good one that will primarily tell us, has anybody else applied for something or registered something already that's too similar. We're trying to see, can you get this through with the trademark office? If you go overturning every stone looking for every common law use, I promise you what happens, you get a full comprehensive report, you get something this big, it's 1,000 pages, it's gonna scare you from using any name. Right? And those do cost still $1,000, $1,500, $2,000. I don't think they're worth a client's while in the position we're talking about. Look,
as long as they have flexibility and understanding that
there is some risk.
What you don't pay for, and look, it's not exactly, I hate the word shortcut. I just want to find a faster way.
Yeah. No,
right? And so understand that there is mitigating risk and absolving risk are two different things. I've learned that from the attorney conversations. Yeah. I live in the mitigation world. I can only mitigate as much as I can from what I see. And after that, okay, so what's the worst case scenario? I might have to go back and do another logo, a different trademark, a different conversation.
Preach. This is it.
It's not that expensive.
Yeah.
And I know it sucks because it's especially in the entrepreneur world and the inventor world, it's their baby. I get it. You want, it's like changing your kid's name halfway through their life. Like,
don't fall in love with the name. It's more trouble than it's worth.
That's the real key. But I also tell clients this too. If you want the name, like I said earlier, we can probably get you the name. Now, if you have enough money, we definitely can. Otherwise, if we return a report to you, here's what we're gonna do. I'll just give you an example. If you come to us and you place an order with us, this is what happens. You come to our website, You fill out our form. It takes you a few minutes. You pay the fee up front there. Okay, once you pay that fee, it goes into our client trust account. What we do next, we run a search. We send you that report. We give you our feedback. We tell you if you want to have a call to discuss further, we're happy to do it. If you decide not to move forward, we're either going to send you a full refund or we're going to hold that in trust and we're just going to keep running searches until you find the name you want to move forward with.
That's the camp that we're very much aligned on. Because again, I've heard the same thing, right? All of a sudden, we've done our due diligence and look, we're the creative side of this. I got to come up with the name that fits the brand, about the product that we're going to sell. So all those rules come into play. We've gone through probably about 20 to 30 names, or maybe 10 to 15. Now the one we pick, I send to you guys for a trademark attorney, and it comes back with some sort of concern. I'm not even talking arguable, but like, hey, there's a concern here. The first call we get is like, hey, I thought you guys knew how to do your job. I'm like, this is a diligence process, right? The reason why you're hiring us is to go through it. The reason why we're flat feet is because I'm okay having to go back and do it again.
Yep.
Right? That's not on you. I cannot predict everybody's outcome without the team. I can give you the creative side of it, and I need you guys to go through the legal side of it. And even then, in the end, if we need to change it again, we're going to work together to figure it out because, like you said, don't fall in love with the name. Like, be flexible. And you want a name that represents you, but I'm also going to say that we're good at brand building.
Well, in talking about that like risk mitigation thing and how we can't really predict what's going to happen, I really love giving clients additional background on how it works,
Right.
which I feel a lot of attorneys maybe don't do in the trademark space, which is there are about 500 examining attorneys that work for the federal government in the trademark office. So when you file your application, it's going to be assigned to one of those 500 people.
Which is,
And like,
how many applications go in every day?
oh, well, about 500,000 a year. So, I mean, these people have an overwhelming amount of applications to review.
It's impossible to process.
It's very difficult to do.
45 minutes max.
And you're dealing with
And usually you're going to go to the crick on a bad Friday when they want to get out of there.
this is what I'm saying.
You're going to
This is what I'm saying.
no, for no reason.
You never know.
Right.
You never know who it's going to be.
And I'm not knocking them. It's an overwhelming
reality.
position. It's a practical reality. We all do it. So
Yeah, which is why also I say if you get a refusal, it's not I mean I don't want to pat ourselves on the back, but our the rate at which we overcome refusals is incredibly high. Now number one, that's because we send a search report and we get very honest feedback. I mean, I will tell you very much so if I do not think you should move forward with a name, I do not hesitate to tell people that. Just like I don't hesitate to tell people that in litigation, the lawyers are the only people who make money. So do not litigate unless you absolutely have to. Now, we do litigate. Sometimes you do have
you
to,
guys got to make a living.
right? But I am not here to twist somebody's arm. I'm here to say,
The
be a
service
good
you
business
guys can
person.
offer keeps the lights on, keeps your services going. Litigation's going to come with your bigger clients.
Yeah.
And again, I'm doing the same thing. I'm trying to take these small, look, I got two choices. I got to go out and find something to do with every big company out there, or I can listen to the next big thing that's coming in and give me a call.
Yeah.
I've chosen to listen to 30,000 people that might have the next big thing.
Yeah.
And I am trying to find, again, just, our own record. I've got just over 700 people that we've taken or in the process of taking to market. It's a very small percentage of people that I've chosen to say, I like this. And I would say it's probably a bigger portion of people that are still in the process of trying to figure out how to afford to do it.
Yeah.
And so that's fine. Both are acceptable. But it's the ones that just jump in and think that money can solve it. I don't see that. But you guys, look at anything that you want to add. I know we've got what's the next one? What protection are granted? Trademarks. I think that's pretty much covered. So walk me through enforcing a trademark on Amazon. How does that process work?
Yeah, so
We talked about litigation. Is this litigation or is this just sending a letter?
I'd say it's on the gradient.
Okay.
So it's, again, Amazon being above the law. They have their own system.
They're
They
ahead
have
of the
their
law.
own. Ahead of the law.
Well, no, it is. It's really like,
The
it's
laws
supposed
can't
to be-
catch up with what they're doing.
Well,
Yeah, so they form of alternative dispute resolution.
And guess what? They're really not doing anything wrong.
no, not at all. I mean, I think that most of
They're
our
protecting
clients,
the consumer really well. They're very difficult if you're a vendor.
well, getting back to what I was saying about litigation is so expensive. I think it's incredible that Amazon and the social media platforms, they have created processes by which if you have a registered trademark, because it's the same thing, if you have a registered trademark on the principal register and somebody's using your name on any of Meta's platforms, on Instagram, on Facebook, to offer competing goods or services under the same name, you can file a takedown request. It's very easy. You can do it yourself, or if you hire us to do it, it's going to be very, 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 very inexpensive compared to what it costs to file a lawsuit in federal court to enforce your rights.
Right.
Because their point is they want to wash their hands. They basically don't want to get in the middle of an IP dispute.
No, 100%.
You have this principal registration.
Look, I made a comment that they're very difficult for vendors, and rightfully so. There's so many vendors that have taken advantage of loopholes that probably Amazon didn't know. That now they, I say it's difficult. It's actually practical.
Yeah.
They want to make sure that everyone is protected, that the products are protected, but more that the consumer is protected. I like the fact that, highly returned items, like there's things now that you can see every day.
Mm-hmm.
Those platforms are working to better it and make it.
I would tell you,
Yeah.
as simple as it seems to submit the takedown request, I represent a client right now in a lawsuit based on Amazon takedown was filed.
You still have to be careful. There are pitfalls, like anything else. If you go willy-nilly trying to take people down because you think you have the right to, but you haven't consulted with an attorney yet, you may find yourself subject to a claim as well. But I think to get to the heart of the question you asked, if a client comes to us and they say, hey, somebody's out there infringing my mark, what do you recommend I do? Well, typically we recommend first you send a cease and desist letter. Then if you send a cease and desist letter, we say, though, you've got to be prepared to take additional action if they don't respond in a way to try to resolve this dispute.
Or respond with proof that
go pound sand. Exactly.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. But what's nice about something like the tools Amazon might allow, if it's Amazon seller to Amazon seller, is, well, if they don't comply, you don't have to go file your lawsuit in federal court. We've got this nice intermediate step we can take to say, okay, well, now we're going to file this takedown request, right? And it's not the most difficult process, but like Derrick said, there are pitfalls to doing it if you just rush to go do it without understanding exactly what you're allowed to do and who you're allowed to do it against and what the risks might be if you're get out over your skis asserting your rights against somebody maybe you shouldn't have.
100%. All right, so how did you guys meet? Tell us a little bit about you guys.
I guess I was actually in law school at the time, and he brought this energy to a guest lecture.
You've got some energy. I thought it was natural.
No, comes by it honestly. I think it's the learners as leaders context. Talking about the future of the legal profession, people are thinking about not just your run-of-the-mill legal services, but what the practice of law should look like in 2050. And I think you had just recently started the firm.
We were maybe a couple years in.
Yeah, and actually my wife is an attorney as well. And she said, you got to meet this guy. He talks like you, he thinks like you, like, let's go. So it just slowly, we've stayed in touch. We've just been friends for about a decade at this point.
We connected when Derrick was in law school, and we wanted to work together, but getting to the point you made, when we started this law firm, Bill, Randy, and I, the founding partners, we started just with an idea and a business plan.
Yeah.
We brought very few clients from our old practice. We were mostly patent litigators. They were patent litigators. Randy did trademark work as well. I was a business litigator and a patent litigator, but we spent about 2 years developing this business plan and immersing ourselves in trademark law. Now we've had this firm for 11 years now. I've lived and breathed, IP law. Clients us all the time about disputes because we were just talking about them. When you're in a dispute in federal court, you need to understand this may be the most important thing in the world to you, but to this judge, he's got much bigger fish to fry, and he's probably, or she's probably like, why can't these business owners just figure this out? And that's what they want. So we talk a lot about disputes and dispute resolution, and we are big believers, like I said before, trying to resolve this short of litigation. I mean, we're ready to fight if it's time to fight. I bring my intense energy in a very different way to those sorts of disputes. But if you're going to be in court, the judge is probably going to be sitting there thinking, if these people made me make a decision, nobody's going to like it.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. I think everything is manageable, mitigatable. I think going through a process is exactly that. It's a process. It's a discovery. It's to find out, hey, this is what we want to do with the best intentions. I think everybody does go forward with that. Love the fact that you get a flat fee. I love the fact that I do think that the billable hour method is good for like the bigger, high-powered attorneys that have spent the years and earned those rights. But even then, I think that model is changing.
Yes.
I don't think that the bottom client is coming into those big firms. So.
No, and even the top clients, I think they're starting to recognize that there is more predictability here than the traditional hourly model, maybe really reflected. So even for us on litigation services, especially for something like a TTAB proceeding where somebody has opposed a trademark application, or they filed a petition to cancel a registration based on whatever grounds, we know what the stages are. We know roughly what the work will entail, for each given phase of the proceeding. So we think it's actually better for the businesses to say, okay, I can predict for the next 12 months what these expenses will look like. And then I can make a business decision to say, all right, do I actually want to have a conversation with the other party about coexistence? Or is it worth me pushing through and seeing how they react if we go through the motions with discovery and whatnot?
Well, I think this is the power that you guys brought to the table. And again, all I will say, I appreciate everybody is welcome to come and visit the podcast and let's have this conversation. This is not about me. This is about me and you guys teaching everybody out there what needs to be said. But you guys specifically came here on your own dime, and I want to give you guys a lot of credit for that because we're going to teach everybody. And I think the part that I am struggling with when I reach out or when Jack reaches out, and we talk to a lot of attorneys, they get their business, but they don't get mine, right? And so they don't get my product. They don't get, and I'm speaking for my clients, I'm speaking for myself, like, sometimes like I need to do more things in-house. And I do think that the hybrid of counsel that is more boutiquish to their business clients or their clients understands that business is where this has got to go.
Absolutely.
I think there's flat fees. I think there's times where you got to pay the hourly rate. I think there's just there's a working relationship here that still needs to be figured out. It can't be, I don't want to call it one-sided because that's unfair, but it just, I don't always feel like when I get a contract back or I get responses back, I'm like, you don't get this. Like,
missing the context.
Yeah, like I'm trying to keep things as simple as possible. And so help me understand what you're misinterpreting here. Let's just get this done. But once people understand, it's pretty easy.
Yeah, our mantra is we want people doing people things and computers doing computer things.
Yeah.
Right? So if a client calls, I want to be able to spend as much time as I need to spend talking to them to understand their business, to advise them, answer all of their questions. I don't want them thinking there's a clock running and I'm getting billed and I got to rush or I got to leave things out. That's not helpful to anybody. Where we can save them money is by having, what they don't need to be paying me for is data entry that I can build systems to do much better.
Yeah.
Right? So what we're trying to do is use these flat fees to make it so that spread across all of our clients, it makes sense for us. It's going to make sense for everybody because what we're going to do is actually get to know you. We're going to be able to advise you. And when you have a need, we're going to be able to identify it, tell you what it costs. And you have the agency then to make the decision, is that worth it where I'm at in my business right now? Not some unpredictable, and one thing I hate, especially on the litigation front, you see it all the time. We're very honest. I'm going to tell you, this is going to be expensive. This is how much it's going to cost. People don't believe it sometimes because there are plenty of lawyers who say, oh yeah, I can follow that complaint, I'll take you 5 hours.
But the other side, people are emotional and go, I don't care what it costs.
Yeah.
Get it done. And then when they get to bill, they're like, what the hell is this?
That's absolutely right. And who wants that? I want it to be clear. I want to know up front. I want you to know up front so there's no questioning of what we're charging. And also we don't feel like, oh, wait a second, because this also happens. I mean, I used to work in a place where we bill by the hour. You send the big invoice and the person's like, I'm not paying that.
Right.
And then a bunch of lawyers are like, but I just worked 80 hours a week for 8 straight weeks on this case, and now this person's saying they're not going to pay? Like, I'd rather spend time with my family.
Yeah.
That's very much how I feel. So we're trying to find that balance.
I think that's what everybody in the business world is trying to do, right? Like, everyone thinks there's a shortcut until there's a certain thing, like in our world, it's tooling, it's manufacturing. That is a well-defined process, and it's a well-oiled machine, so to speak. Making things is easy. You get choices, you make those choices well in the beginning, you get well results in the end. If you rush through it, you end up with mistakes. And as much as we go fast, we don't make mistakes.
Well, I think going back to what you said, that's why collaborations like this make a lot of sense to me. I think a lot of attorneys might live within their own little bubble. They might not think about the manufacturing side, or might contemplate go-to-market strategies. But you guys, not just being on the marketing and branding sides of it, but really taking something all the way to shelves. I think that's a lot of insight that a lot of startups, that a lot of early-stage entrepreneurs, they need that input. But it's informed by the IP side. The IP side is informed by the practical decisions about,
And there's a different lawyer for every step in this case. Like,
Exactly.
Like just what goes on the packaging.
Yeah.
What goes into consumer protection laws. Like, there's a different attorney for every step. Which, again, if you really look at what, again, we can have another subject. I'd love to get you guys' take on where AI is going to take this industry, your industry, and my industry. Can't do that today because that's a whole another hour podcast.
Yep.
But it's definitely worthy of the conversation because I think a lot of old information is what ChatGPT and AI is giving you.
Yeah.
But there's already a big transition towards the new way things are done, especially for the 4 or 5 different generations that are now still active in business, right? Boomers are still running their businesses. Gen Xers are still running. Millennials are running. And now you got Zennials and whatever comes after them are just getting to that age. So, it's not just like, what do I do? It's how do I do it based on the generation gaps.
Absolutely.
So, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Is there anything else that we need to know about your guys' business? Where to find you guys? Please plug it. Tell them this goes live just the way it is.
Yeah, come to trusttree.com. If you need a trademark, you need a patent, if you need any really intellectual property service at all, we're happy to talk to you. Happy to talk to you about branding. Happy to talk to you about any of it. And if you don't like talking to people, we're also great for that too, because you can just come click a button, place an order, and we'll email you, and you never have to speak to anybody. So we know there are people who also prefer it that way. You've heard me talk here a lot, and if this is not the energy you're looking for, you can talk to Bill via email, and you'll find it to be a very pleasant and efficient experience.
So for the record, I mean, I understand in your guys' world, but in the world, people think, oh, you pay a referral. Attorneys, you guys are not all, you guys cannot take referrals. So
That's right.
I'm not here to refer or pay you guys for saying things good. I'm looking for alignment. Like, to me, the most important thing is our client. The alignment of that, this process is something we have to navigate together. Let's make sure it gets done right. Let's make sure at the end of the day, the client succeeds. Because at the end, if the client doesn't succeed, we do not have, I want to be able to talk to the client that we worked on together in one of these podcasts at some point and talk about how they navigated the whole thing front to back with everybody that needs to be involved so that people understand. Because when you understand, it's scary, but it's not hard to bring a product to market.
Not at all. It's like everything else.
The biggest reward too.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, full circle.
Guys, I appreciate everybody tuning in and watching. Please like us, share us, follow us. Pitch to Product Podcast is here for you guys to learn everything that you need to know about how to bring a product to market, including these 2 special guests that came in and flew in on their own dime from Tennessee, the great state of Tennessee. And please reach out to them if you have questions before you even meet us. The idea here is I want everybody to understand it's a process. It is something we all do very well, and we do something very well together. So thank you, gentlemen, for coming in today.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Awesome. Thank you guys for tuning in.